Hi everybody, today's video will be about surviving the foreign language immersion environment in the classroom. Now, I know from experience teaching foreign language that learning a foreign language can be really intimidating for a lot of people, and more so if they're asked to do so in an environment where they're spoken to mostly in the target language and they're expected to also speak in the target language whenever possible. People are afraid of looking foolish a lot of the times, of mispronouncing things, and when the foreign language comes at them very rapid fire, it can feel very overwhelming, especially right at the beginning of a class that's conducted in accordance with the immersion method. So here are 5 pieces of advice for how to navigate that environment and turn it to your best advantage as a student. And the first piece of advice that I would like to give you as an instructor is that you don't panic. Communication is always going to be messy. Even when we're communicating in our first language, communication is messy. There are going to be misunderstandings. And I, as your professor, and most likely any foreign language professor that you have, understands that this is not the most efficient way for us to communicate. If I wanted to communicate with you efficiently, I would speak entirely in English, and which is presumably your first language as well in most cases. But it's not about communicating efficiently. It's about providing the most conducive environment for you to learn. And the way that I do that is by speaking Spanish to you. I don't expect you to understand every single word that comes out of my mouth when I'm speaking Spanish in the classroom. And I expect that we're going to have miscommunication sometimes. Something's going to get lost in translation. Maybe students aren't following my instructions to the letter, but we'll get through it. That's all part of the process that helps you learn. The second piece of advice that I can give you is to come to class prepared. As long as you know the material that we've covered because you've done the readings and you've attempted some homework on the subject, and as long as you know what's expected of you, aka you've been reading your calendar and you've been keeping up on what due dates and deadlines are in place, you're going to be fine in my class if you don't understand every single word that I've said. I don't ever want a student to leave my classroom without knowing what they need to do before they come back in the door the next class session. So if you have lingering questions about the material or about what the homework assignment is, what you need to do, by when, etc. Those are times when I'm happy to speak English to you in order to communicate that material. But if I say something on the fly in class and a couple people in class laugh and other people are like, oh, what? And you missed it, it's probably not the end of the world. It's not a big deal. As long as you know the material and what's expected of you, feel free to let some things slide sometimes. The third piece of advice that I would have for you is that you give full energy to all the different channels of communication that are available to you. I don't just communicate with the words coming out of my mouth. If you were just having a transcript of this video right now, you would have far fewer cues by which to interpret the information that's coming at you. Instead, I'm delivering information through my words that I'm speaking, but also through my tone of voice, my facial expression, my body language. And when I'm in the classroom, I'm using the board, I'm using sometimes video, sometimes props to reinforce the words that are coming out of my mouth. And so you really need to pay attention to all of these different channels of information, and it'll be much, much easier for you to follow. So rather than focusing on the words that you're not understanding, let those go by and see if you can intuit what I'm saying based on my tone of voice or my facial expression. Say, oh, right now she looks like she's asking a question. Or, oh, this is something that should make me feel angry, or perhaps she's making a joke at this time. Those other cues will help you decide what to prioritize in the message, and also will give you a fair amount of the substance of the message a lot of the time. The fourth piece of advice that I would have for you is related to this, and it has to do with what an old professor of mine called activating your environmental intelligence. And what he meant by activating your environmental intelligence was using all of the information in the context in order to draw conclusions about what's going on and what's important. So if I provide some instructions to the class and you didn't catch the instructions, feel free to look at what the person next to you is doing. If I say, open your book to page blah, 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 you didn't catch what page we're on, see what page the guy next to you is on, and then turn to that page. If we're playing a game and I give you the rules of the game and I give you the the game board and I give you the game pieces and so on and so forth, look at what the next group is doing with the game board and the game pieces. Look at the pieces themselves and look at the board and make some decisions about how it might be used and how it might be played. And I will come and help you. I will be there to help you troubleshoot and to redirect you if something isn't going exactly according to plan. But activating your environmental intelligence is really about looking at what those around you are doing and what cues you can draw from the environment. You know, a lot of classroom interactions are very predictable. We're working out of a textbook, we're opening our books to some page, we're closing our books, we're standing up, we're sitting down, we're working in groups, we're working with a partner. And a lot of it becomes very routine and predictable after just a couple of weeks. So a couple of weeks in, you're going to pretty much know what's going on, especially if you remember to activate your environmental intelligence. Last but not least, my piece of advice to you would be to trust the process. You know, lots of studies have been done that show that this is how people learn a language best, is by being exposed to the language as much as possible. And here in Hampton Roads, Virginia, we aren't exposed to a heck of a lot of Spanish in our environment. It would be very different if we were living in New Mexico or California or Arizona, or for that matter, even Washington, D.C., just a few hours north. We'd have Spanish all around us all the time. But as it is, as your Spanish professor, I feel a profound responsibility to expose you to Spanish, to spoken Spanish as much as possible, give you as many opportunities as possible to hear the language. And you can create this at home for yourself by taking your favorite Disney movie that you've watched over and over and over again and listening to the dubbed version in Spanish, finding music in a genre that you like that's in Spanish, to just kind of have it on and in your environment and sort of reduce the anxiety surrounding hearing the spoken language. So if you do these things, if you trust this process and seek to surround yourself with opportunities to hear Spanish, the way that I will seek to provide those opportunities for you, you're going to find that with a little patience and a little bit of humor, the immersion environment is not going to be an obstacle to your learning, but instead a major, major asset. So thanks for listening, and I look forward to working with you. Buena suerte. Ciao.